good morning. Good morning to you on this glorious Saturday morning. We do appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us today. It is a pretty momentous time. So I think today's webinar is going to be very timely. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kirsten Liegman, and my role today is going to be more on the side. I have a little cockpit over here, and I'm going to be monitoring the chat more today than being here speaking, because I want to give my lovely husband here the stage. In terms of today and how the flow will go is Rennie is going to take some time, about an hour, to just talk about the times that we live in. And then in the second part of this webinar, we're going to do our regular monthly hope meditation. So this is our monthly hope meditation webinar. And what that is, it's a project that is now going to start building more and more and more. So next month, today is 6/6. So next month on 7/7 will be our next one. Then 8/8 in August, 9/9 in September, 10/10 in October. I can get mine straight here. Building up to our culmination event in November on 11/11 at 11/11 Mountain Time or 1/11 Eastern Time. We are going to do a global, this meditation that we're practicing basically. So each month we're practicing and getting better at putting the frequencies out that are necessary to make that 11/11 event most powerful. So what we're doing is we're seeing that fear is rising in the world, anger is rising in the world. I mean, we're seeing it in real time right now. I mean, Rennie has been talking about this for years and years and years. Fear will be rising. Fear is rising. Well, we're now seeing it boil up to the surface. And we want to balance that fear. The fears in the collectives, and it's going to have an incredibly detrimental effect on the world as a whole. And so we can balance this fear with frequencies. And we did a webinar last month where we talked about the power of frequencies and how frequencies are the tool with which we can actually heal things. We can affect our own inner well-being. It's a tool that is not well known. Our science doesn't understand it because it can't measure it yet. And so these frequencies is what we're using to help balance the fear with life. And so these meditations every month are there for us to help practice the frequencies, allow our nervous system to let the frequencies move through our body with more ease, and to be able to amplify it. The more people that are able to amplify that frequency powerfully on 11/11 will have the most impact. And so that's why we're doing this on a monthly basis. So that's what this webinar, the foundation of this webinar is, and we're doing them every month. In the emails that you got, you have access to the meditation that we're going to be doing for free. So make sure you download that and do it on your own in between these webinars. For one, it's going to help you manage your own fear and anxiety, and it's going to help shift your internal state of being so that you can learn to maintain a total calm serenity bubble that is going to be less affected by what's going on in the world. So today, what we are going to be focusing, what Rennie is going to be focusing on, is what is happening in the world, what is still in front of us, and what we ultimately can do about it. I mean, if you look at the world as a whole right now, it just seems like the calamities and the catastrophes and the challenges just keep mounting. I mean, the memes about 2020 are just, it's like, what's up, 2020? What's up? This is just crazy. And so we can look at those each, talk about the coronavirus pandemic, the global economic depression, the climate change issues where there is droughts and famines, and there are locusts in Africa. I mean, you can keep going down the list. And you can say, well, these are all unrelated events. Yeah, some of those are climate change related and they connect, but most of them are unrelated. And what we're here to present today is this understanding that they are all related, that there is a convergence of events happening right now, that if we're willing to stand in front of it, to be clear-eyed, without fear, see what is happening in the world, see what is still ahead of us, and then create the inner state of being and the activity outside that will move us into a place where we can create a human civilization that does not destroy the earth, that is able to thrive in alignment with the intelligence of nature. So if you're a world changer, if you're somebody who knows that how we've been living on Earth is not sustainable and is no longer functional, and you want to make your mark, if you want to be part of the solution, be part of that which is to emerge, to create and pioneer that, then you're in the right place. But in order to do that, we have to understand that the change has to start with ourselves. And that is part of what we are calling the new humanity. Those of you who understand we have to change ourselves so that we can change the world and let what wants to emerge. So welcome to all of you. And so the reason we wanted to give Rennie the platform today is, as many of you know, he was part of the social unrest that happened in the 60s. There was a similar, what do you call it, a convulsion? Convulsion protest. That was happening in the 60s. And Rennie literally was at the eye of the hurricane of that storm. He was one of the coordinators of the coordinator of the largest the coalitions that came together in protest. And they put together the largest marches, the largest protests, and the one that many people know of is the one in 1968 at the Chicago National Democratic Convention that led to the Chicago 7 trial, which Rennie was one of the defendants. There's actually a movie coming out about it in September. Finally, Spielberg has been trying to do that movie for many years now, and it sounds like that's coming out now in September with a British crew. Go figure. So we're looking forward to that. But Rennie also has a gift, and those of you with eyes to see and ears to hear, you will be able to understand that part of him. He was in the Grand Canyon for 4 years, and that opened up a gift of seeing, knowing, and it's a pretty profound gift, and I've been very grateful for that gift. And so he's gonna use that gift plus his experience today to hopefully bring a little more clarity around what is going on in the world and where we can choose to go.
If there really was a way to see the future, to actually understand what's coming into our life right now at the present time. You know, quite honestly, a lot of people would kind of prefer ignorance is bliss. And I'm certainly not saying there's anything wrong with that. I am going to say right now, though, that if that's kind of, you know, if you've stumbled into this webinar and you prefer ignorance is bliss, now would be a very good time to just close your computer lid and basically, you know, find something beautiful to do outside and go as far away from this webinar as you can possibly go, because we are going to open the curtains of the future. And we're going to see pretty clear-eyed what time it is, who we are, what is going on in this world. And if you really understand that sometimes knowledge is useful for navigating a difficult time, you know, then you're really in the right place today. So, I mean, the first thing that we're all seeing, of course, is just, I mean, it's shock and awe experiences. Not many people expected a pandemic, and then followed by a global depression. And now we have this, it sort of started as a national convulsion protest to support George Floyd, but it's like very much like the 60s. It's now broken out into countries all over the world. And you know, it's I mean, you have this beautiful expression of humanity coming together, and you also have the looting and the fires at the same time. And mostly the public is discerning between these two messages. I mean, they understand really that this is a gigantic, deep feeling. I mean, it is a movement to change the world, and the movement to change the world, as we probably know from history, is a very rare social phenomenon. But when they happen, civilizations can change. I mean, the Renaissance changed a feudal order, and the American Revolution defeated the British colonial empire, and the 60s absolutely stood down of America's legal lynching. I mean, it did, and it stood up to one of the most brutal wars, you know, the war in Vietnam. So we're in a movement to change the world, but you know, I just don't want anything, you know, a lot of people are coming up to me right now, well, how does this compare with the 60s? And so there are some experiences from the 60s actually that are relevant to understanding what the future is bringing. The main experience of the 60s is probably not what anybody would think, is events come in that turn everything on a dime, change everything. They come out of nowhere and they just change everything. I mean, the assassination of Martin Luther King was just, you know, this unexpected cataclysm event that changed everything. I mean, 100 cities went up in riots when Martin Luther King was assassinated. It was assassinated in April of 1968. And the same thing happened just a few months later when Robert Kennedy was assassinated. I mean, the outcome of the presidential election was affected by one event that no one saw coming. And so I'll just take a few minutes to jump into the 60s. You know, I'm trying to really show those experiences that are relevant to today. Movements build, you know. I mean, in the 60s, movement started with 4 people, 4 Black men. They were all freshmen at a North Carolina college. They were up half the night, you know, just shaking in fear about what they were about to do. They went into a Woolworth's lunch counter. They sat down. They refused to move until they were served the lunch. You know, and basically the media picked up on them. And you know, I was a student in Ohio at Oberlin College, and like students all across the country, you know, we just watched their courage. You know, I mean, cigarettes were ground out in the back of their neck, and they were just into their nonviolent philosophy. They didn't strike back. They just stuck it out, and they literally. I mean, within 3 months, there were 400,000 or 500,000 people in a movement for civil rights. And that then went on, and I mean, there was the March on Washington. That was a gigantic event. But basically, it took time. I mean, it took us 7 years as a movement to acquire the wisdom that it would be a good idea for all the different organizations to have one coalition, where once in a while we would do things all together. You know, that was a big. I mean, it took 7 years to do that. But in October '68, we had 150 national organizations. At that time, I was just returning from a trip to North Vietnam. You know, the United States was bombing North Vietnam. It was forbidden to go into North Vietnam. The Pentagon's position was that it was only attacking military targets. They called it steel and concrete. You know, so here was a first eyewitness. I mean, I was in Hanoi. I was in a bomb shelter every single day. I was in Hanoi. I would leave a bomb shelter after an air raid and go out and see an entire city block in Hanoi that, you know, leveled. I mean, everything was still hot. It was just, it happened. There was no question what was, you know, and you know, or villages were bombed, you know, and so when I spoke at this first event, you know, at the time we thought it was a pretty good turnout. You know, in light of what we did much later, it was a really kind of small event. I mean, 150,000 people came to our first coalition mobilization. It was a march on the Pentagon. That was, you may have seen some pictures, you know, of college students putting flowers in the rifle butts of soldiers who were also their same age, you know, protecting the Pentagon. It was a dramatic thing. What I did was to speak about what I saw in North Vietnam, and because it contradicted the entire position of the government, it was news. It was carried live on all 3 networks at that time. And that talk resulted in me being elected to coordinate the next project. And the next project was in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention. So what I'm saying is events can change. I mean, at that moment, there was absolute certainty that Lyndon Johnson, the president, who was conducting the war, the commander-in-chief, would be renominated at the convention. There was no opposition in the Democratic Party at all to anybody standing up to him. Well, so the anti-war movement, which was now us, this coalition, was the only voice, but huge numbers of people were opposed to the war. And so, you know, I knew, you know, for sure, you know, that we would have at least 500,000 people at Chicago. You know, and we were preparing actually for more. I mean, so the logistics were all built on that. So you got quite an orchestration, you know, of how to do that. And suddenly everything changed. What changed was the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Daley, you know, was a huff and puff kind of political boss who basically would have no part of it. Even though the White House screamed bloody murder and the Justice Department sent out its top executive to meet with me and then to meet with Mayor Daley, when Roy Wilkins from the Justice Department mentioned my name to Mayor Daley, he just turned completely flushed. I mean, he looked like he was going to have a heart attack, and he just ran and raved for 20 minutes. And Roy Wilkins understood that permits were not going to be granted in Chicago. That's what I mean about events can come out of left field that really are unexpected and are a surprise. And that's what we're facing right now. We don't know what's coming, And so as we're going to open this curtain today and actually see what is coming. And I'll explain that in a minute, how that's possible. Um, so yeah, so we went, and obviously it was not 500,000 people. It was, it was really about 25,000 people showed up in Chicago. They were all people. They were young, people in their 50s and 60s were. I mean, you risk your life going into Chicago, so the numbers were cut down, but the courage was still there, and we went and. We camped out in a park where Boy Scouts had stayed overnight, and that seemed like a good idea to me. So, but when the 11 o'clock curfew came, so did the police, and Chicago began. It was one of the most brutal assaults on. It wasn't just demonstrators and newsmen. Yeah, I mean, well-known anchormen on all the networks were beaten bloody too, but also just people who were sitting out on their porch, around Lincoln Park. They were pulled off their porch and beaten and gassed. And so the country started to watch this incredible event, and it just kept building and building. At the last minute, the city decided to grant a permit, not where we wanted to go at the amphitheater, but in downtown Chicago. I decided to accept the permit because, it gave people who were in their 50s and 60s, a chance to come out. I mean, we would at least have one peaceful event and be able to say why we came to Chicago. A teenager went to the flagpole in the park and lowered the flag to half mast, and it triggered the police, and so the police came crashing in, beating people as they came, to arrest this teenager, who basically later in our trial said this was a signal of international distress. And we were highly organized in Chicago. I had 5,000 marshals that I could, basically just, threw up a line of marshals, kind of locked fists like this. And we, surrounded our people and just calmed everything down. And then I addressed the police on the whole forum that we had a permit and that we were under control here, and that it would be in the interest of peace for the day if the police would withdraw. And with that, that set it off again, and in they came attacking. It was one of those moments in my own life where, I thought about, how choice of death actually occurs. I mean, I had 50 policemen coming right at me, screaming out loud, "Kill Davis," and I was hit on the head and knocked to the ground. But then, I was still conscious, and I was just being beaten on the back. And it was one of those moments where it just didn't seem like too likely I was going to quite get out of this one. There was a little chain fence that was my savior that day. I came to this little chain fence in the park, and I was able to crawl under that fence, on my arms, and then stand up and get into the crowd, and the crowd then took me off to a side where I did pass out, And so at that point, when I came back, I had to go to the hospital, and it's to show you the enormous impact that this was having on people in Chicago and people around the world. I got 13 stitches. I looked like one of those poster boys for I don't know, the Civil War poster or something. my bandages went like this and like this, you know. It was like all, you know, you could see my eyes. Well, it was a kind of hysterical look. But anyway, as I was finishing up my surgery or whatever you want to call it, police came into the hospital to do a room by room search. The last thing they wanted was for me to be beaten and not arrested. And so I'm going to tell this story just because it's so moving and so amazing what happens in times like this. I mean, these were employees of the county of Cook County, you know, and so they could lose their career over this, you know. But they put me on a little table and moved with wheels and cover me up, you know, with a sheet, and basically moved me from room to room in defiance of the police search, and basically until they could get me to an exit where I was able to get out. It still today is one of the, I mean, there's so many things in a movement that just surprise people, the humanity that comes in, the courage that you see from people you would never even imagine was possible. It's truly a beautiful thing. We're seeing it today. And certainly there were many times throughout the 60s where we could see it there. So I, you know, watched the night of the nomination from a friend's house, you know, on television. I was not able to really be out on the streets, and that was the day when Martin Luther King's, you know, Poor People's March basically, you know, came through with a mule train and, you know, people on the wagon, and they were gassed and they were beaten. The number of people that watched this police riot on television were more people than watched the moment when the first man landed on the moon. And so that, to give you an idea of the impact of this single event, Gallup did a study of the attitude of American population towards the Vietnam War just 2 weeks before this event. And you know, I mean, the country always supported its government in a war. And so a majority of the country still supported the Vietnam War. But 2 weeks after the event in Chicago, a majority of the American people opposed the war in Vietnam. So for my part, I was indicted with 7 other people, and we went to trial. And the New York Times called it the most significant political trial in American history on the opening day of the trial before it even started. And, you know, for me, it was just, it was the evenings that were the incredible thing, because we were on bail. We had bail, 7 of us did. And so we would go out and speak every night after the trial. And that's where it was all happening. I mean, if I had a totally pathetic small turnout, it would be 5,000 people. You know, if I spoke with, say, Abby Hoffman or one of the other defendants, we needed an armory, you know, 25,000 minimum space. You know, lots of times the governor would call out the National Guard because I was speaking, and that would always be in a stadium. So there was this tremendous energy, and it kept building and building and building until when President Nixon expanded the Vietnam War by bombing Cambodia, the Chicago 7, as we were called for a nationwide student strike. And there, I would say, is something just like today, you know. I mean, this is now the 12th day of a continuing protest, and that's what happened. I mean, 90% of American universities and colleges closed down and basically just went into protest. And it wasn't 12 days, it went on for a couple of months. And it wasn't just in the United States. I mean, entire platoons of GIs literally deserted their posts in Vietnam, active duty combat soldiers, you know, supporting what we were doing in the United States. Military brass, you know, tried to do military parades and the usual things that they did, they were all canceled, not because of us, but because of the internal opposition of the GIs inside their bases. And so, yeah, that was a period where it looked like a movement to change the world was invincible, and that change was inevitable. And and then again, something happened that came out of left field, and it was in ourselves. The This was a nonviolent movement, and everyone basically came to the opinion that what more can we do? And so in the fall of 1970, after this incredible wave of resistance, I mean, if you tried to call an anti-war meeting on a college campus, nobody showed up. I was learning that, chemical Agent Orange was really causing genetic mutations in Vietnam, and there was vast concern about what that meant. It turns out today there are many fourth generation Vietnamese born who, are born with genetic mutations because of chemical Agent Orange. And that's what I was concerned about. That's what I was warning about. I went to the coalition that had supported me in everything. I mean, we had done demonstrations with 500,000 people in Washington and 250,000 people in San Francisco on the same day with no arrests at all. I mean, we were a coalition that was not afraid to act, and yet everyone was convinced that, my proposal was large-scale civil disobedience, like Martin Luther King had done previously in the South. And it was just not that there was any resistance to that idea. It was just impossible, couldn't be done. I decided to go test the waters. So I went to a campus, and everybody told me nobody would turn out, but there were 5,000 people in the room. Everybody was still there. Everybody wanted to see and get a sense of what was happening. And so I just called for, let's go to Washington. Let's actually, if the government of the United States has not stopped the war in Vietnam, then we will stop the government of the United States. We're going to sit in roads and bridges during rush hour traffic and close the government. So what turned out to be impossible, on the opening day of our event, we had 250,000 people. Of the people who were ready to actually be arrested, I spoke to 100,000 people. It was the largest arrest in American history. And historians today believe it was what caused the White House to decide to sign the Paris Peace Accords. So events change. You come along and you're not sure. I mean, at this point, it was the end. I mean, John Lennon came out at that point. He wanted to be against the war. So pretty soon I was in his apartment, and I proposed to him, let's just tour the country. I'll bring the speakers, you bring the music, and we'll go to 42 cities and then bring 1 million people to the Republican convention. And to my, kind of amazement, really, he said, okay, let's do it. We did one event, in Ann Arbor, indoor venue, 25,000 people, tickets sold out in 40 minutes. It looked good, but with that, Nixon basically came out of it left field again, and another unexpected surprise, and deportation proceedings against John Lennon began. And with that, the movement to change the world in the 60s came to an end. Just going through this little history, because what I'm wanting to leave with you is just that events change. You're really with certainty that this is in front of you. And I know a lot of people think right now with certainty what's in front of them, but the whole more surprises are coming. So how I want to introduce today is a difficult subject. I'm not, uh, wanting to be anything, or bring attention to myself, particularly on anything like this. What happened for me, as Kirsten said, was I was invited by a good friend of mine to go on a 5-day retreat into the Grand Canyon. If you've ever been to the canyon, it's beautiful as it go to the edge, but it's something else to actually walk in. You can drop in by helicopter, but the way to do it is to walk. And it's about a 7-hour walk, from the canyon lip to down to the bottom. Um, and there was the Havasupai Indians. This is their world, and they have property, they have homes and things like that. And so the last home on the Havasupai side of and it was a person who had a relationship with the person who was organizing our little retreat. And so we were able to camp out in his yard, basically, with tents. And when 5 days came around, if you've ever been to the canyon, it's rather beautiful. It's a beautiful place. It's a mystical place. And I just found that I wasn't about that. I couldn't leave in 5 days. So, 5 days turned into 5 months, and then 5 months turned into years. I mean, I would come out to get supplies, and I would come and go, but at the bottom of the Grand Canyon was my home. And I did something that some of you I know have versions of this yourself, where you go off into nature and you maybe do a meditation retreat for, I don't know, 12 days is pretty formidable, really. 12 days without talking to a single human being, where you try to get out of your brain chatter and just be present. It is a remarkable thing to do. A lot of discoveries, at least for me, a lot of discoveries, became possible. And so I'm not going to go into all of that. I just want to say one of the discoveries was rather an amazing thing, which was that time and space is not the natural order of things. Simultaneity is the natural order of things. That means that the past, the present, and the future are all occurring right now in the present moment. I mean, if you try to figure this out with your brain, it'll just, it's really pretty difficult to put your arms around that one, I know. Those of you that have been working with us for years, we're taking you into this realm of simultaneity, and step by step, and it's a remarkable thing. It is a gift that any human being can acquire for themselves. But the reason I'm bringing it up today is because it means that you can go to the future and you can see the present time through the eyes of the future, through simultaneity. And when you know how to step into the shoes of simultaneity, you now have the ability of seeing through the looking glass of hindsight. So everything I'm about to say is based on how the future sees this present time. And, it's not to try to invoke doom and gloom. It's not to have any edge of an ideology. We're at the end time. It's, this is just the perspective of the future looking at the present time. And I'm sharing it with you now. So put on your seatbelt. What can I say? So the future sees this time in a way that no science or tradition or anything human has ever even grasped. It has to do with the journey of evolution. It is recorded in our genetics in 23 pairs of chromosomes. We all know we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. What we don't all know is that everything human begins with chromosome 23. Chromosome 1 was 300 million years in development. Chromosome 4 was 500 million years in development. And so you keep coming up to 13, 17, 18, chromosome 22. There's no human on Earth at chromosome 22. If you wanted to know who came before humans, all you have to do is ask your own body to show you yourself at chromosome 22. And, if you're still working on that part of yourself, I'll just give you a hint, Yeti. Okay, Yeti is chromosome 22. And chromosome 23 is where the male-female project begins. And so the event from one chromosome to another is a natural process of evolution. It's been with us for a very long time. And chromosome 23 is now culminating. And so in this world that where we live, it is all about evolution, but no one makes you evolve. Evolution is self-selecting. Evolution is based on the law of free will. You can choose to evolve or you can choose not to evolve. In the eyes of evolution, there's really no right or wrong, really. So, but at this moment, evolution is up for the human race. If we don't evolve, that's fine, but it's also an opportunity. The one thing we cannot do is sit on the fence. And so this world that we live in, this is now the future, seeing what it's understanding. It's not the present understanding. This is not an understanding of any tradition or any religion or any ideology or any new age spiritual understanding. This is all the future, how it sees it. The human race, it can survive if it evolves. But the thing is that, to be the change that changes the world, Mahatma Gandhi said that. A lot of people have said that, but it's not what you think. Gandhi wouldn't, there's a know-how that's completely new to the world that's required to make this leap of life. And so that know-how is now in the world. And that's actually all that we're doing, is we're just trying to get this know-how to people who feel drawn to it. It's not what you think. I'll just give you one tiny example. Okay, and there's so many. There's 10,000 things that could be said just like this. Okay, take egos. Everybody knows egos. They think. And everybody would say, yeah, let's all check our egos. But here's the deal of our present stage of awareness. We don't know what an ego is. There's no psychologist, scientist, or psychiatrist who has ever explained what an ego actually is, how it's made, where they hide exactly. How many, a lot of people think we have one ego. We have thousands and thousands of egos. All these identities that we've believed into existence basically pull the strings of our life and rule our life. And we have no idea who they are, what they are, how they got created, how to find them, and so now there's tools basically to exactly identify an ego. Egos hide in our reactions. So somebody comes along and triggers you and you're just upset as all get out about this person. But actually you're having a reaction in yourself, and behind that reaction is an ego pulling your strings that's drawn to you, this person that's triggering you. So in the world of the future doesn't point the finger at the person who triggered them. The future says to the person who triggered them, thank you, thank you, thank you for showing me a window into myself. Because now that I can see this ego, now I can name it. Oh, there's my victim ego. There's my poor me ego. There's my anger ego. There's my Ronnie righteous ego. You with the ability to notice and observe an ego, you can basically see it, name it, and now you've got control over it again. And so it's a simple tool, but it's not known to our present time. It's something you do precisely. It's not like nothing vague. It's like, here's how you do it: 1, 2, 3, 4. And so basically, a group of human beings at this time, I mean, there's really millions of us. How many of us are there who think they're on a journey to evolve? When we do a survey of the whole world, we come up with about 5% of the human race. That's 400 million people are basically looking at themselves, wanting to take bad habits and remove them with their observation and their discipline, and they're learning not to beat themselves up for bad habits. They just focus on themselves, and that is the constituency right now that the future sees becomes the future of our world. That is the future of our world right there. And we're all here. Now, at the moment, we're a little tiny group, in terms of the know-how. The 5% of humanity on a journey to evolve does need know-how and does need specifics, but basically the events that are coming, okay, are going to create a fascination with what we do. Okay, so what exactly is coming as seen by the future? So this is not my opinion or anything. This is just what's coming. I mean, with the pandemic is not going away quickly. And the pandemic is just opening the door to a whole range of diseases that basically are going to basically be pruning an unhealthy species. The human race has exceeded its load limit on the planet. So there's now a series of things that are now coming in, because the way to see this time is to see through the eyes of evolution. Okay, this is a moment when a great change is happening. This is the culmination of chromosome 23. It doesn't mean it's the end of humanity if we choose to evolve. And there's no right or wrong. And most people, it would appear, are not going to choose to make this leap of life. But for some of you, this is really your calling. And if it is, then you definitely should not close your computer lid. This is really the place to be. So what is exactly coming? Well, droughts are coming, and droughts and food insecurities are going to cause more loss of life by a considerable number than the pandemic. The pandemic is not going away quickly. It's just that we're just beginning, okay? This is basically a time, you remember the Roman Empire, and we all have our history books, if you were a Roman during the collapse of the Roman Empire, you believed that everything was normal and everything was fine right to the end. It's just we hold on to our commitment to the civilization that we're in because it's our identity. And it's very difficult to look up and see the horizon. So what is coming over the horizon is food insecurities. And so I don't know what to say, not to say not to go forward with a movement to change the world, but when the future looks at this time, of all the components of the movements, and all the components that make up the movement to change the world, the new humanity is that component that creates the future of our species. The new humanity, it doesn't start off trying to change the world. The new humanity starts off to profoundly change ourselves. That's the whole thing. Now, I mean, it seems sort of self-evident that aquifers are being depleted largely because of big agriculture. I'm sure big agriculture understands the science of these aquifers. The aquifers are being depleted very rapidly, and yet they commitment to the profit motive, profit above all else, it really, it's just amazing, really. We're just at a certain stage of awareness. We can't help ourselves. We're going to take the water because otherwise it affects our bottom line until the whole food chain delivery system snaps. So, I mean, how does the whole thing work out from the future's point of view, say on the Paris Peace Accords that were signed in 2015, where all the countries of the world agreed to hold uh, the temperature, through pollution of carbon dioxide, to 2 degrees Celsius. Basically, what happened was all the nations just kind of slow walked their commitments. And that slow walking of commission meant that 2 degrees Celsius is signed, sealed, and delivered. We missed that window from the perspective of the future. Not only that, we went on to 3 degrees Celsius because the oil and gas industry just could not let go of its profits, no matter what the evidence was. And so, if you want to get ready for the time that's coming, you want to first of all get ready for the heat. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine what 3 degrees Celsius feels like, but you can live there. You really can. Uh, uh, I'm going to screen share with you a work of one of the architects that's working with us, Dakota. He's come up with some really brilliant little designs, showing the house that, really you need for this time that we're heading into. See, I mean, here's a house that basically is completely self-sufficient. One is mobile and the other one is sort of buried in the ground. There's a greenhouse that's 4 feet below the frame of the house that is the whole width of the house. And basically, so that you have a greenhouse inside your house. You also have a mushroom farm. You could put in aquaponics into this house as well. And basically, by partially burying the ground into the ground, you start to access a whole world of earth air conditioning. And so you've got your own food in this house, and water is going to basically be generated through a range of technologies that are completely new to the world. Some of them are known, like the ability to bring water out of the atmosphere. That'll be available to everybody in the house. The reason for the mobile unit is because of the events that are coming. So first comes the warming up, so we're going up to 3 degrees Celsius for sure. But then after the warming up comes the cooling down. How the future notes this, but also the Earth is self-aware, and so with the ability to access or talk to the Earth through the language of feeling, the language of the Earth. I mean, not nothing general here. We're not talking about, yeah, I talk to plants and I feel good with plants. No, this is really like we would have a conversation to people. That's what I'm talking about. The Earth is basically, you can ask the Earth for its weather report. There are scientists who have theorized what the Earth's weather report says, but it's sort of a fringe of science at this point. And it's completely unexpected to humanity. Like, again, back to the unexpected, oh my God, another unexpected. So what is coming is the warming up, 3 degrees Celsius, pulls the water like an ocean into the sky. And then one day it starts to rain and the rain turns to snow. And then it starts to snow for not 6 feet, but for 40 feet. 40 feet straight on. This is what's coming. And basically an ice age, basically. If you're trying to think you're going to reform civilization, just, an ice age is coming. What can I say? This is the point of view of the future, looking at the present time. This is the perspective of the earth. The greatest changes that are happening are going to come from the earth rebalancing, and the ice age is at the heart of the matter. However, in this ice age that is coming, the snow and ice will basically go to an area just about to the Arizona borderline, okay? And then from Arizona to the equator and an equidistance on the other side, it will be a 4 seasons, a little swampy, but very livable. And that's where the new humanity will begin to build the future of our species. And so we're moving to Arizona, and we're going to set up a new living model. I mean, when food insecurities come, that is going to be a factor for, anybody who shops. Okay, so there's going to be great desire for people to be able to grow their own food. And so there'll be all eco villages will be booming all over the place. There's no question about it. There's also a world of inventors that have been here for a long time, but are kind of unknown to society. They're certainly unknown to major corporations and businesses. I mean, how does technology development work in the present world? You have an existing know-how and you improve it with vast sums of money and laboratories that are very sophisticated. None of these inventions are not created by big laboratories. They're the creative input of a single individual, and basically they are producing energy that's over unity. Now that's, according to the second law of thermodynamics, an utter impossibility. In fact, if you go to the patent office and try to patent an over unity device, what that means is that the energy going in is less than the energy coming out. That's not possible according to present science. And yet, I can tell you that there are inventors, and they have over unity devices. Free energy is already here in the world. And so with the calamities that are coming, this is going to be the time when free energy comes forward and a whole range of technologies comes forward. I mean, every single thing can be recycled with a compaction technology that can literally make, a wall for a home that can withstand winds of 250 miles an hour. And it's stronger than cement with rebar. It's just made out of dirt or made out of the material from a landfill. And that technology is here and available to us. And so a whole world of technology that is aligned with the intelligence of nature is coming forward in what I call New Humanity Living. These are new living communities. And the first task to build a showcase of how it be done. Everybody's going to want something like this, but we believe it's possible to really create an example of what's possible that includes the technologies. But the most important thing is not the technologies or our understanding of carbon farming or mycelium or how to regenerate the climate. The most important thing is that this community births a new human being. This community is based on a new stage of awareness. This community basically does collaborate and respect. And that basically this community demonstrates that in an age of extinction, it is absolutely possible still to have free will. And the choice to live in despair and depression over the fall of humanity is certainly a choice that many people will be making. But you can also choose to create a new humanity in yourself. You can also choose to walk a path of awe and wonder. This can be the greatest moment of life ever, okay? Yeah, it's just a choice. It really is just a choice. And so, yes, there's know-how, and, if you are drawn to this concept, then I would suggest you stick around. Don't close your computer lid at all, that's our mission is this. We have the information. We know how to do this. We're all students ourselves trying to wake up and move into a completely new stage of awareness ourselves. It's humanity's greatest adventure. And what we have going for us is not our size. What we have going for us is the future. The future knows who we are, and the future understands that we are the future of humanity. And it's going to come about in a time of calamity. So, we all want to, have an approach of how to survive autocracy. The future knows that, I'm looking out of a window right now, and there's a little tree and some bushes and so forth, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's the life of trees and plants. Okay, the future knows that that tree is a hologram. The future knows that this whole world is a holographic design, and that changing a hologram is very difficult. But there are mechanisms that the future discovers for changing a hologram. I'm just going to call them spatial anomalies. The solstice and the equinox is a time when you could change the whole world because of a spatial anomaly that occurs at that time. You could change your whole life because you have a spatial anomaly on the day before, the day of, and the day after your birthday, 3 days. And so the ability. So spatial anomalies is a very complicated subject. If you want to know about that, you would need to join one of our master classes. However, I just want to say that there is a spatial anomaly right now over the United States that's descending lower and lower and lower. And this one has marked on it government. Okay, and so the government, the republic, the United States Republic is coming under this gray space anomaly. There was one before the United States began. They gave rise to this experiment in democracy. But now the attitude of all the people who live under the anomaly are basically tearing the government apart. It's not just Trump, it's actually all of us. Okay, and so our government is coming to a closure. This is the future, okay? So, how to survive autocracy is going to be an issue, but autocracies are going to be struggling to survive themselves. All the big institutions that everybody's also worried about, the Illuminati and the big conspiracy theories and everything, they're all in. Humanity is in trouble. All its institutions are in trouble. Everything is coming to a closure because this is the culmination of chromosome 23. And basically, that's where we're at. I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news. It's not actually bad news. It's just a cycle of life. It's a natural cycle of life. If we understood the history of our 23 pairs of chromosomes, everybody would know what I'm talking about. But now, today, there is a moment when a group of human beings could profoundly change themselves and create the future of humanity. And according to the future, looking at the present time, it is the new humanity that writes a new human story for this planet. Okay.
Is that it? I know that was a lot. When Rennie talks, there's always a lot and, a lot to absorb. And so before we go into our meditation, and it is 11:11 here right now. How perfect is that? This is my all is well number. And this does require a 100th monkey, if you will. you know, a sufficient number of us to affect the hologram. And so, you know, the more of us that can wake up to where we can go and who we can choose to become and what kind of a world we can design from that new stage of awareness. A new stage of awareness gives us a new perspective, a new perception. You know, Einstein, you know, always said that, you know, you can't solve your problems with the same level of thinking that you were in when you created them. But in order to change our thinking, in order to change our perception, we have to change our stage of awareness, the way we look at things. I mean, how many times in your life have you had moments where you suddenly made a shift so profound in yourself that you suddenly looked at the world in a completely different way, something that seemed completely self-evident in one moment, completely 180 degrees shifted with that change of perception. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for incremental change anymore. The time for incremental change has finished. And going back to the old normal, that is no longer an option either. So if old normal is not okay anymore, not an option, if incremental change is not going to get us there, what is it going to take for us to actually make a profound leap, a quantum leap that is going to change the outcome, change ourselves internally and change the outcome? And so that is who the new humanity is. And, you know, if you feel any longing for that kind of a future, then you are part of the new humanity. It's just a label we're giving in order to not, you know, have to keep saying it's people who want a sustainable, thriving, loving, kind world. You know, it's the new humanity, that the people who want to change themselves. So,
all right, so I'm just going to be briefly say that we see rumors of war in 2020, and the future sees that the outcome of those rumors occur in 2022. The people that have been able to step into simultaneity all through history have all seen the year 2022 as the central year of human history. And that's in front of us. That's not, you know, we're just warming up right now. So what I want to say is that the future sees that this meditation you're about to do is basically the divine intervention that prevents World War III. And so it still requires us to get it and to do it. And so this is not another meditation where we all basically send out our good vibes into the world. This is an energy that is unique to our galaxy. It has never been in the world before. It's the latest energy in existence, and it cannot be compressed by the density of fear. It is impervious to fear. It's already circling the globe, truly, okay? It's about a 25-mile diameter just below the stratosphere, and it's designed to basically balance the fear that is coming in 2022. And so I just, you know, invite you to really try to open up to this. Yes, it's subtle, and it takes a while to get there, perhaps. That's why we're practicing and practicing. This is a very big deal. I mean, it really is. And, you know, just feel your excitement that you're a part of this, not just for yourself, but for the whole human race. This is a gift of the universe to the new humanity at this time. And so, you know, I just want to share that little background as you basically really, truly try to be present, try to be open, and let your own physical body experience electrical life in its purest form. It's a frequency that is new to our world.
and again, if you want to explore further what it means to be part of the new humanity and what you would like to, how you would like to contribute and what might be next for you, I'm here for a conversation. So again, go to my scheduler, and it's go.oneshub.com/Kirsten Liegman. And with that, we will see you in about 4 weeks. And we wish you an incredible, beautiful rest of the day. See if you can stay in this energy and in presence for as long as possible. Watch your brain. It'll start coming back in and start doing its chatter again. And so see if you can, for me, what's been helping is this notion of my breath is my existence. And it's literally just focusing all the time as best I can on my breath, and that helping me stay in presence and in awe and in wonder of anything that's around. So you might want to practice that, just your breath, put the frequency of electrical life in its purest form on your breath, and keep focusing on breathing it in and breathing it out all day long. Okay. All right. You are all so welcome. It was wonderful to have you all here, and we will see you and hear from you hopefully soon. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.